What's up, everybody? This is Phil from the BSR, and today I'm joined by Cotter Ellis of the band Goose and many others. But Cotter, it's great to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, so it feels like every time I open Instagram, I see that you're playing another gig somewhere. Whether that's with I know a few weeks back you played with Reprise, which was a Fish cover band. You have Nico Suave and the Mothership, Dobbs Dead, Cotter and Friends. I saw you the Tank improv sessions a little bit ago. I wanted to ask what keeps you motivated to keep playing all these shows when you already have such a consistent and demanding gig with Goose?
Yeah, I mean, my girlfriend asked the same thing. A lot of people ask me the same thing. Uh, I mean, I think my trajectory as a musician was I got a science degree in college, and I started a band in college, and then basically after college I was like, I don't want to do anything in conservation, not because I don't care about it, but because it just at the time seemed pretty depressing, and still seems pretty like a tough job. And God bless everyone who's in that field. But I was like, I want to pursue the drums for sure. I was in a band starting in sixth grade through when I left for college. I was in the same band. Started a band in college. So after I moved to Burlington, Vermont, and just like was getting after it and grinding as hard as I could just to survive and not have to work a day job and just play. And for, 10 or 11 years, I was just doing that and kind of built my name up in Burlington. So I was getting enough gigs to pay the bills. And it's weird going from that lifestyle where you have to work all the time to getting a gig like Goose. And I feel like, that like, I don't know, that fire inside me to just always keep gigging didn't go away. And also now I have a ton of friends and connections that I built over those 10 years in Burlington. And I just love playing. And sometimes I think I need to learn how to say no. But I always love playing the gig. It's just sometimes I'm like, man, I probably should have left some time for me to sleep or rest or a lot of stuff like in terms of mental health. It's good to take some time to just relax. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just love a ton of musicians. I have a great network, and I love playing drums live.
Yeah. Uh-huh. For sure. So if we could just start from the beginning. I know your dad was a musician. I heard you actually picked up stacks before you played percussion. Like, just how did you start playing? When did you know that music was what you wanted to do? And just give us a background on that.
Yeah, I mean, my dad was a musician, so obviously that's a huge influence there. I got to go see him play a lot with his multiple bands that were like generally all people from Berkeley, a lot of Berkeley professors in the College of Music in Boston. And so I had some great, musicians surrounding me as a kid. And then when I kind of went into my punk rock phase in like fifth grade or sixth grade, and I played percussion for about a year, and then was like, I really want to just play the kit, and I learned how to play the drum set by starting a band and playing like Green Day covers, and it was like a pop punk cover band to start.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was cool learning drum set where I would take lessons, but really it was learning with all my friends who had each picked an instrument. We all learned our instruments together as a band instead of individually, like just individually. And that band went through a lot of different musical phases. I started smoking pot in high school, and we started sounding a little bit more like Sublime.
Uh-huh.
Which was very big when I was a youngster. I don't know if they're so big anymore, but they were big with the potheads back in the day. So yeah, like, and I always just loved all music. There was so much music in my house growing up, all different kinds. Just playing. We had a huge record collection, and so yeah, I just always loved it. And then, like I said, college, started the band. That was like kind of my next phase. I didn't see like Fish or get into jam bands until I was probably like 16 or 17.
Oh wow.
And it was right when Fish came back from their hiatus in 2009.
Hmm.
That was kind of my entrance to the jam world, and I immediately fell in love with it. I was a huge Frank Zappa fan, and I think
Okay.
that Fish really appealed to that side of my musical tastes, and just the vibe. The community was amazing, and then I started going to festivals and just getting deeper into that scene. And yeah, then
Hmm.
started Swimmer, moved here, and rest is history.
Yeah. So from that first Fish show on in '09, you were primarily playing jam music at that point with Swimmer in college, and then from then on.
Yeah, I mean, when I moved to Burlington, I'm really grateful that I got a ton of different calls from all kinds of bands. I've played with an insane amount of different styles. Like I had a friend who was like our jazz drummer, uh, like broke his leg or something, and I was always very intimidated by jazz. I loved listening to jazz, and my teacher in college was a jazz drummer, and he was amazing. It's such a different approach than any other kind of music as a drummer. And it was really intimidating to me at first until I realized it's the most expressive type of drumming there is. And it's very similar to what I go for in a jam. It's not like I'm trying to be a bop drummer in a jam, but the principles are the most similar, I think. It's just being expressive and not just playing a groove, but you're speaking on the drum kit as if, you're playing a melodic instrument. Um, yeah, I played with bluegrass bands, folk bands, obviously a ton of Grateful Dead cover bands and like, but all kinds of stuff. Singer songwriters always needing a drummer for a session and so like yeah, I had to learn jazz. I had to learn all these different styles, and I was really into that. I wasn't like, oh, this is just a job. I was like, oh, I can expand my musical horizons.
Hmm. It's funny you brought up jazz. I wanted to ask you. I'm a jazz musician myself,
Nice.
but I also love the jam scene, and I feel like what is it for you that you love about the jam scene over jazz? Because I feel like there's a lot of jazz musicians that might be like, oh, I'm not a huge fan of the whole Fish, Grateful Dead thing, and then there's a lot of people on the jam scene that might say like, I'm not a fan of the jazz thing. So what do you think it is for you that obviously you're a fan of both, but what do you think separates the jam scene for you over like jazz?
I mean, man, I you could write a book on this. I think, I think I don't want to get too heady here, but I think it's kind of it's a mindset thing and a scene thing. It's almost like half of it at least is a social thing.
Hmm.
I think jazz is absolutely viewed as more intellectual, and it is, and it's put into more of like a um, Western education setting. Like, you can go get a jazz degree, you can't get a jam degree, but like in its core, like it's the only two types of music, in general, that are improving every night. When you play a show, when you play a jazz show or a jam show, you are stepping into the unknown of music. And like I think that jazz has gotten it got kind of uptight in a lot of ways, where it was like you had to play it a certain way because it was like something people were learning in school. They thought that there was a way,
Hmm.
and there's so much merit to learning about music in school, any kind of music. But I think it can also, the danger is that it boxes your view in of what it should be. And whereas if you think about what was happening in the early 40s with jazz, it was like they were taking shit and they were doing things you weren't supposed to do with it. They were taking chances and playing notes that weren't supposed to work
Hmm.
and kind of pushing the boundaries of music. And I think that is in its nature more intellectual. But like if you really deep dive on Fish, which I have, they are extremely intellectual with their songwriting and their all the polyrhythmic things that are going on and the way they approach jams. I think is a lot more serious than people give them credit for. Especially you're an average fan who there's so much stigma on the jam scene of being this like hippie bullshit where you're just kind of. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I can
No, you're
swear
all
here.
good.
But yeah, it's kind of like in a way it is. In a way, it's silly, which jazz isn't. I'm sure. I mean, you got like Sun Ra, which is something Fish was really into. I just recently learned that Trey put out this record that was a tribute to Sun Ra,
Oh, really?
and yeah, and it's oh man, I can't remember the name of it now, but it's Fish, John Fishman, Trey. There's a second drummer, Bob Galati, who I was playing the role of in those reprise shows I did as a second drummer, and that's where I learned about it. And it's just like stepping into this world of avant-garde jazz that Sun Ra created, really, that he pioneered. And it's so that's there's really cool connections there. Um, you know, to each their own for sure. I think
Hmm.
they're definitely different, but I think the thing that connects them is like wanting to explore music further and really do the scariest thing you can do in performance, which is go out in front of an audience and just go for it. And obviously, no one in either world who's any good is just going for it. You're preparing yourself to go out and step into the chaos of music and to the unknown and try to create something beautiful in the moment based on all of like as much information and practice as you have. That's the more tools, the more weapons in your arsenal to go out there and create something beautiful in the moment, you know?
Hmm. For
So
sure.
I would hope that people on both sides would at least appreciate that principle in the other side, you know?
Hmm.
I don't expect jazz like fans to love jam bands, but you know you do, and I think a lot of people do. If you keep an open mind, I think you'll enjoy music a lot more.
Yeah. And then, so eventually you're playing with Swimmer for all these years, you're gigging in Burlington, and then you finally get that call from Goose. I saw in a World Cafe interview, I think either you or Peter said that back in the day when you guys were like on the scene together, I think he said to you or you said to him, like, hey, I'd love to play in a band with you one day, which is just funny to hear. So what was that like coming in? I think the first time playing was actually released. It was the TED tapes. How did that feel? What was that like?
It was awesome. Yeah, it was Peter said that to me. I think it was the last gig that Great Blue and Swimmer played together at Arch Street Tavern in Hartford, I think. But we used to play together all the time. Always loved Peter. And so, yeah, he was the one who hit me up originally. Rick had also, Goose had played with Swimmer at Nectar's in like 2018.
Hmm.
So Rick had seen me play in my band. And I remember talking to him after in the green room at Nectar's and like just exchanging, you know, like we were both psyched on each other's playing. And then didn't think much more of it. And when I got this call, I obviously, you know, from other interviews and stuff, at first I didn't know it was an audition. So going to jam with them, which, you know, became the TED tapes, it was it was awesome, and it felt like there was a fire there. There was something special was going on. But for me, it was just like really fun to step into these guys' world and have everything click so well. Where like we were, when you're in an improv, it's like, especially after years and years of doing it, I feel like you know when things are working, like when ideas are flowing and it's just inspired, and it goes on for like 30 minutes because it doesn't feel like 30 minutes. It's kind of just like every moment is exciting, and that's what those sessions were like. And I didn't know any of their songs at that point, and some of those TED tape jams were them being like, hey, we're going to just play this song. You don't know it, but that's great. Let's see what you do with it. And then we would play through the song, which obviously wasn't included on the TED tapes. And then those jams were all jams out of me playing through Goose songs for the first time.
Hmm.
So it was kind of like I was taking in their songwriting in the moment without knowing it really before. And and then being like that was what inspired all that improv. So it was really special.
Yeah, I think you can definitely hear that on the TED tapes too, like the instant chemistry and connection. I thought those sounded great.
Yeah, thank you.
And then you get the gig, and it's that first cap run, which is kind of crazy. You're thrown into a 4-night run to start with this band, so obviously you had to learn a ton of material, and they didn't hold back either. Like I know you guys played all the toughest stuff. Like you played the Labyrinth, you played both Seekers, everything. So was that? I imagine it was very difficult preparing all those tunes and nerve wracking coming in. So how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean that was extremely challenging. I mean, it was also like the weight of like being like, okay, this band is established and loved, and they're great, you know. They sounded great before I got there. They're a great fucking band, and it was like I now have a responsibility to do this music justice, and that is an interesting thing when that's something in it's a mental trip as much as it is like actually sitting down on the kit and shedding. And you know, it like took me about a year to kind of get out of my head about trying to make it sound like it did, and kind of be comfortable enough to really be myself with the music. That being said, obviously I'm myself, but that was a big challenge in my head, shedding all those tunes, writing charts. I wrote about like 78 charts. So I was practicing a ton, and also I was going to Connecticut to practice with them, and they really had my back and supported me and like my journey. They're extremely like empathetic, supportive dudes. So it was a trip, man. It was really, really fun, really stressful, but in a great way. I felt like at that point, Swimmer had kind of ended when COVID hit because we were broke,
Hmm.
and I was kind of surrendering myself to playing covers and weddings to pay the bills, and I definitely hit like a plateau. I wasn't feeling inspired as a drummer like I was for a long time, playing all different types of music and having my own original project, extremely inspiring. And I wasn't feeling inspired. So this was like a blast of inspiration, and it was all at once. It was extremely overwhelming, but it was exactly what I always dreamed of. And it brought me back to really loving music again. After like COVID just kind of being a very interesting time, a challenging time for any musician, I'm sure,
Yeah.
who was gigging. So yeah, the whole thing was it was a really great experience. And then going on stage that first time was one of the wildest physical feelings I've ever had in my life. Just like the moment it all started, because I started the first song of the first night.
It was Flow Down, right?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
requested that we open with Flow. They asked, "What do you want to open with?" And Flow Down was my favorite tune. It's still one of my favorites for sure.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so yeah, I started it, and like that moment was extremely wild. It's still mind blowing, and like this is a simulation. What the hell is going on? Kind of vibes, you know.
Yeah. Would you say that that is like your craziest, like, holy crap, look at where I am moment? Or is it like, I remember I was at Soul Shine at MSG. So I was there thinking like, this guy is on stage at Madison Square Garden right now. It's sold out. And like a year ago, he was like playing the bar scene in Vermont. Like that must have been crazy.
Yeah, that was definitely crazy. I think it's like I don't want to say I got desensitized by then, but it was like I don't know. The craziest feeling was definitely the cap night one, because I
Hmm.
was just like, this is just it's I'm part of something that's so much bigger than myself, and the fans were all so cool. Not all, but the vast majority of them were very, very cool and supportive, and it was just this beautiful moment, and the energy in there, because like I think it's interesting playing a venue like the Cap. the energy is so, it's intimate, it's palpable and it's intimate. And so it's like you see people's eyes and it's this beautiful connection between the band and the audience. Whereas a place like MSG, it's so big that the intimacy is kind of lost. The energy is more of this like creature. It's this, you can absolutely feel the energy in MSG, but it's less of like a, I'm connected with individuals in the audience. It's more like the audience is one big entity. And then, but like going to MSG for the first time was a wild experience, and being around all of these people that I've looked up to my entire life. We were we were sound checking, and with any gig where there's a bunch of bands, sound check's always a mess. It doesn't matter if it's a crappy festival in the woods of Vermont or if it's MSG. It's always a mess, and you kind of just have to roll with it. You never really get everything dialed the way you want to, especially your first time playing MSG. You're nervous, and it was a mess. And Dave Matthews just like silently like walked up beside me at one point next to the stage as the monitor guy's like freaking out trying to figure everything out, and we're like, are we gonna get a sound check, like what the hell's going on? And he just like walked up next to me. He was like, man, like thank you so much for like doing this and having me be a part of your show. Like I appreciate you so much, to me. And I was like, this is fucking crazy, dude. What the heck is going on? But it was, the vibe there was so cool. And it was just like dudes, like these people that I had seen as larger than life, which I still do, were just really kind. I got to hang out with Joe Russo, who's one of my favorite drummers for sure. And a lot of people. And it was, that was a moment where it was like, man, that the other trip of this whole thing is like the imposter syndrome thing is like, man, do I belong on the stage with these guys? Because it was such a separate thing from my world for so long. But that was a big moment in that regard of being like, man, maybe like we really do belong here. Like they made us feel like we belonged on that stage with them. Not to say that like my ego blew up after that and I was like, yeah, we're great, but that was really special in that regard. There's been a lot of moments. I mean, there's so many aspects of this whole trip of being in Goose. So tons of moments. I think the most powerful moment though, is definitely that Cap first show at the Cap.
So this year with Goose, in this past year, I feel like you guys have, especially over the summer, sort of fallen in love with, the fans have dubbed it as like the Goose thing, like the EDM style of jamming that you guys are doing. I wanted to ask, where did that come from? Was it from, I know you guys played with some of the guys from the Disco Biscuits, like a late night set at Jazz Fest, and all the jams were sort of like that. Is that where that came from, or how did you guys get into that?
Well, I've always dipped my toe into that world. I used to see the Biscuits a lot. But yeah, I think it was just partially, it was like we're always trying to expand our arsenal, the sounds that we can get in a jam. And then it's really like, I think we all kind of look at it as like we want to learn new approaches to jams, and then we want to really like sharpen all those approaches. And I think the Goons thing was just something that we kind of like started doing. Peter got this thing called the Push 3, which allowed for us to have a world clock on stage, so we can get a click and then we can have arpeggiators, which was like kind of it's a part of some of the Goose songs. Generally, we're not playing with a click, but if there's an arpeggiator, if there's any drummers out there, I think they would know how much of a pain it is to play with just an arpeggiator in your ear, because sometimes the attack of the synth isn't directly on the downbeat. So playing along with an arpeggiator can be really challenging. Sometimes it gets lost in the mix. So then we started using this click, and then we were like, oh, well, now like if we're in any jam, Peter can just tap the click and hit an arpeggiator, and we can just go into arpeggiator world. And then that kind of developed into like, okay, now we're gonna like once we start hitting this dance groove, like the disco groove, we can really sit in this space. And it was inspiring and fun. And so then we kind of just leaned into it. I think, going forward, who knows how much we'll do that. It was definitely a huge theme of the last year, especially like, the summer and fall tours. But I think it was just because we were having a lot of fun with it. I think uh, we're also aware of the fact that like, okay, now it's time to build other approaches so that we're not beating the Goons thing to death. But
Hmm.
the Goons thing was a lot of fun, and it is a lot of fun. It's not going to go anywhere by any means, but we don't want to overdo it either because we're not like a Jamtronica band. I think we made an effort even in the past year, the amount of times we did it, we made an effort to not do it too much because that's not just the sound we're going for, but it was really fun and inspiring, and it allowed us to use this like more modern approach of like having the click and being able to add and subtract different, especially in keyboard world, add and subtract different patterns, synth patterns, loops, all kinds of stuff, kind of like a live producer would do. And yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So is that something that beforehand, like as you guys are going out for a set, you're thinking like, oh, we're gonna take this one into like Good's territory, or is it just sort of the energy of the moment on stage? If Peter's like, all right, I'm gonna hit the arpeggiator, is that what we're going into, or how does that work?
So it depends. There's been times where we've been like, all right, we're gonna like, for example, um, we they always did the Empress jam with a similar trajectory. Like, we would break it down, we would do the bass solo, we do the key solo, guitar solo, and kind of just jam out there. And it was more of like a solo section. And then we were like, what if we just broke it down and made it into this like kind of dance groove? And then we could kind of go wherever we wanted with that and then bring it back for the ending of the song. And then we kind of did that on the record too.
Hmm.
We kind of made it into this dance groove instead of this solo section thing. So like we would be like, all right, Empress tonight, we're gonna do it where we just break it down, hit the click, and see what happens. Whereas, other times it was kind of like we were in a groove. Like there's some moments on like in jams where I would be like, in my head trying to like work something out. And like all of a sudden Peter would hit the click and I have the click very loud in my ears, especially when the first year of me being in the band, I was like really paranoid about like, oh, if there's a click, I don't want to get off from the click. So I just like crush it in my ears, at my ears' expense for sure. But Peter would like turn on the click and it would literally scare the shit out of me in the moment. Cause like, what the fuck was that? And, and then like once he hit the click, it would be like, okay, now we're in this world and let's see what happens. And like sometimes I would make an effort not to do just the four on the floor thing because I've always kind of been a believer of like, I don't know, I used to say like four on the floor is cheating because as a drummer, it can get a little stale because
Hmm.
like of years of playing gigs and house parties, I know that the four on the floor groove is going to make people dance. And so, but there's not a whole lot of room for creativity in the four on the floor. You're kind of locked in to this groove. So my goal was always like, all right, I don't want to just jump to this because I could always do like the upbeat accent, four on the floor, disco groove, and it will work. But then it kind of takes your voice away. It takes my voice away. I'm sure there's drummers like the new drummer for the Biscuits, um, comes from like the hip hop gospel world, and
Hmm.
he's super creative with the on-C jams. I've always felt like I'm not as create like my voice doesn't shine as much, but like I can rip it and I can build the energy. Sometimes that's what's needed. So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of approaches there. And in my head, it's kind of like I want them all to be different. I don't want it to be like we just plan on going in and doing the four on the floor groove because that seems boring to me. But if it happens in the moment, it always usually a lot cooler. But then we've had some jams where we planned on it and it totally worked out. You know,
Hmm.
the energy just worked in that moment. So it's all over
Yeah.
the place.
Do you have a favorite Goons Jam from this year that you can remember?
I don't know. That's a tough one.
I thought the Empress Encore from Chicago in the fall was the best.
Sweet. I I feel like I do, but I don't remember
Okay.
honestly. Yeah, Empress was great in Chicago. The Chicago shows were amazing. Yeah, all of them that we've done. But I think there was a tumble somewhere with the Goons Jam that was pretty sweet. But yeah, I don't know. I'm bad at
Yeah.
recalling.
Uh-huh. So it feels like sometimes in jams, like sort of Rick, Peter, and Trevor or like delve into like it almost becomes atonal, like it's so dark and minor, and it feels like what's your mentality there? Because I feel like you're always just trying to. When I hear that, you're always just trying to keep some semblance of like a beat and a groove going, just so that everybody stays on time. Um, like if you don't know what or you probably don't even remember them, but I was thinking of like the Westville Rockdale from last year, the Grand Rapids Hot Tea this year, the Factory Fiction from Fiddler's Green this year, like those types of jams. What is your mentality in that madness?
Well, the Rockdale from West Westville, like my first tour. Is that the one you're
Yeah.
talking about? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
dude, I felt like that was still one of my favorite jams ever. I do remember that one because I felt like that was the kind of jams that I always wanted to do. Like I like the evil jams,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, I feel like we were just pushing it and going into territory that we normally weren't going into. Um, and that one, it was kind of more of like a. I remember in that jam, I was like, "This is so sick. I just have to hold on for dear life because we were flying and make sure that this lands." But it's always different. It's funny because I don't go in with like, oh, if they do this, I'll do that kind of mindset. It's just like I'm trying to be musical in any moment. In a moment like when we drop into uh the jam, the Modavon jam,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we kind of like just let it breathe. It's kind of like I want to do things that are it's not in a groove, but it's still musically connected. And then just like, big ears and just try to figure out a way to pick up the pieces. I think like when things get atonal and kind of just floating in space or get dark and weird, it's kind of like you want to, especially even if it's not, if you're kind of just taking a break from any kind of groove, it's like you're staring at a blank canvas, and you're just trying to like build the foundation for something to move it forward. I think it really depends on more of like the dynamic vibe, because like the Rockdale was ripping, whereas in others like sometimes it's more spacey, like in like a factory jam, like the factory jam that we put on the record. I was kind of my mind was more in like a Pink Floyd thing. So it's like sometimes obviously huge principle in music that everyone should know is that space can be your best friend. And sometimes I play a lot of notes and fill the space, and other times I really want to let it breathe so that the other boys can develop things without drums dictating what's going to happen. Um, and it can give them more time and more space to do their thing. And then as soon as things start picking up, especially dynamically, I'll respond to them kind of like pushing the dynamics of the section. Then it's time to really connect the rhythms with what they're doing more to propel it to the next zone. But yeah, it changes moment to moment with that kind of stuff. And then like pulling from all of my inspirations there is like what do I think would be cool in this section from all the stuff I've listened to and liked.
Hmm. And like within jams, is it ever something that you guys are thinking about? Because I know Fish back in the day had described that they would like lock themselves in a room and like literally just take turns leading jams. Are you guys ever thinking about like somebody's taking the lead here or like anything like that?
No, I mean, for me, I feel like there's moments where like inspiration really hits me and I'll take off on something. And I feel like, on a good night, it's that process is really organic for us. I think, it was probably the same for Fish. And then it's just like, in order to like, it's just kind of like, it's the same as like music in school. It's like, it's good to study it, but at the end of the day, it's got to be this like intuitive thing. It's got to be like this muse that's leading it. There's something special in the air. So like when I'm playing, it's really like whatever catches my ear, I'll lock onto. And then I have the power of separating my limbs. So like I can hear Trevor playing something really cool. I can lock into that, but I could use as many limbs as I want to lock into that. Generally, kick and bass are connected. Hands are connected to something that's happening more melodically. Like I've always loved the way John Bonham played Zeppelin songs because it was almost like he was playing more with the guitar and the vocals. Like he was directly inspired in his grooves and his fills responding to the vocals and the guitar. So like I do that a lot. Guitar obviously is a classic thing to follow. But then there's been plenty of times where I hear Peter playing something really cool, some rhythm or melody, and I'll lock onto that. It's all in the moment of like, and then it becomes a thing of like the sound. Like if the sound is good for us in our ears at any given venue, it could be a lot easier to just connect in the moment and like, you know, change the jam like on a dime. And that is a lot easier in a place like Grand Rapids, which is a smaller room, than it is at like MSG because I'm getting my overheads. Like I have my overheads pretty cranked because I need to hear, especially my like ride and like the top end is really what you want out of those overheads. But you're also getting the room, and if the room is more boomy, it means you're hearing less detail of especially melodic stuff and like the punch of the bass. So there's also moments where it's like, if that's what I'm hearing, if the room is boomy, then I'll try to make it a little bit more spacious. And also, like, your one hit in a giant room takes up more space sonically than it does in a small room. Like at a club, the snare is quick, but in a big room, one snare hit is big. It's just the nature of the room. So, like, you got to kind of play with those factors too. And then I'm not responding as like quickly, and it's not as proggy and quick in the jam as it might be in a smaller room like Grand Rapids. So yeah, there's a I should start writing down my thoughts because people do ask me this type of stuff, and I always feel like, oh man, it's such a whirlwind because it really there's so many variables.
Uh-huh. What do you think was the biggest change in losing the percussion starting this year? Um, I thought the jams felt much more free, and especially on the winter tour, there were like quite a few jams that were anywhere from like 10 to 20 minutes that I thought got right to it right away. You guys covered more ground than you usually could in like 30 minutes. Tell me just your thoughts on what it was like having only a four-piece band.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously it can make things a little more simple in terms of listening to everyone because you have one less person to listen to. Um, because especially in my mind, it's like I want to connect with everyone on stage when we're jamming. I think like I said, the sound in our ears was really good for that winter tour, especially, and we were just really excited to go out and play. So that kind of fueled that too, and I think we were excited to see what that difference would be musically. Um, and so that principle alone was just kind of inspiring. But yeah, I mean, it's got its its positives and negatives there for sure. I mean, percussion obviously can add a lot. I've like, coming from playing in a four-piece jam band for a long time and being inspired by many four-piece jam bands, it was more of like a dynamic that I was used to. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's tough to say. I
Hmm.
think in some moments in tunes, it's like, oh, I missed the percussion. And in jams, it can be easier with less people, just in the nature of like there's less going on, so it's easier to communicate with each other.
For sure. And I know we're coming up on time here, so I just wanted to get a couple like quick uh, questions in. So, do you have a favorite like show that you've ever played with Goose? I know is it the Cap Night one?
Cap Night One was the most intense and wild experience. Just joining. Um, I've really loved Forest Hills. That's an amazing venue, and there was just a vibe in the air that night. I mean, yeah, it's very tough to pick a favorite for sure. MSG was extremely special on so many levels. It was like just any kid who grew up playing music, that's the dream.
Hmm.
But I've always really loved the nature shows. I think if I had to pick a favorite show at this point, it would have to be Burlington. And I don't
Hmm.
even know. I haven't listened to it. Maybe it sucked musically, but it was. It felt like this world, the musical world of Burlington, is so special to me. It's really, it's just my whole heart belongs. Like everything, I owe so much to this scene, and having Goose come in on a perfect September day, watching the sunset over the mountains like I've done 1,000 times, but on that stage with Goose, and the amount of support from everyone and the locals all coming through, it was like I think it was my favorite show. It was a beautiful experience.
Hmm. Do you have a favorite Goose song and cover?
Favorite Goose song is really tough. I love playing Thatch
Uh
just
huh.
because it's like it's ripping and then it's groovy. And like Arrow too, Flow Down is always really fun. Every song is still super fun for me to play because they give me a lot of space to kind of do my thing. So it's very tough to pick a favorite. There's no song I don't like to play. And
Hmm.
yeah, and cover. That's tough. Uh, man, cover. You're catching me a little out of the swing of things, so they're not all coming to me right away. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna say Spain
Okay.
because it brings me
Yeah.
back to when I was learning jazz, and Spain always kicked my ass, and I always loved that song. I love Chick, and it's really fun to play, even as a
Hmm.
jam band. I'm sure a bunch of jazz snobs would be like, "This fucking blows," but uh, I think it's super fun to play. But there's so many more emotional songs that that Goose has kind of opened my eyes to that are really really fun to play with the boys for sure.
Hmm. And if you could have Goose play one cover of your choice, what would you choose?
Man, that's really tough. I've been trying to get him to play a Pink Floyd song. I was pushing Zeppelin for a long time.
Uh
Obviously,
huh.
it's Goose is more focused on contemporary. Um, so and I love that about them. And like go playing classic rock songs is more of like an old school jam band thing, and they don't want to
Hmm.
fall into that category. But yeah, I got my Zeppelin, I got my Cashmere, and I did a Moby Dick.
Uh huh.
But yeah, I've really wanted to play something from Animals with Goose.
Uh huh.
Like playing like sheep on a big stage is just like would be the coolest thing ever because I love that record and it's such a journey and it's so like Floyd is great for the big stages because it's like there's so much space in that music. It's not dense at all. Also, one day if I could get him to play a Frank Zappa song, I won't even be picky. Any Zappa song will be sick, and I feel like one day I'll convince him. We'll see.
Yeah. What are you listening to at the moment?
Oh, let me pull up my Spotify here or Apple Music. Oh, I'm listening to Bill Frisell.
Okay.
All the time. I can't put it down with this guy. We all saw him as a band and I've always listened to him. But then after I saw him live, I was just like, it's just the most expressive, beautiful music. It doesn't have the same like kind of snobby attitude. I don't know if snobby is the right word, but it feels like really light and free and expressive and emotional. And it's not as much of this like we're a ripping jazz band, which I also love. But yeah, I mean, I put it on all the time. Blake Mills, I've been really into. He put out a new record with Pino Palladino recently, and that record is super cool. He's got this fretless guitar. That's the sound of that thing is one of the most beautiful sounds ever. But yeah, I've been getting back into my love for Little Feat and Paul Simon, who have always been my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my time off, since we ended tour, where I'm just kind of relaxing, I listen to that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And one final question: you guys have Goosemas coming up here in Providence in like 2 weeks now. A lot of people on the internet are speculating at like some kind of a Lost Boys theme or something, and you guys have been kind of quiet. Do you have any spoilers or hints on that?
Yeah, I don't know when this is going to be on air, but tomorrow,
Okay.
Tuesday, we did a really cool video, and I think part of the reason why it took so long is because it's really cool, and they had to put the finishing touches on it. But tomorrow the video will come out. It will set up the whole theme and the vibe. It's really cool. Our creative team is awesome. Will Thresher, our I don't know if he's our head creative guy, but basically he's a genius. And yeah, this idea came together. It's really a cool vibe. It's going to be less of like the bingo thing was so interactive, and I really loved that. This is more of like a story based thing. That's more of an aesthetic vibe. But it's really cool and well done, and we have a whole team of creative people helping us out with this vision. So yeah, it's going to be really cool. I can't say what it is, but everyone will find out tomorrow. At least they'll find out the vibe and the backstory.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time, Cotter. It's great to have you on. Great talking to you.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me.